Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will bring you to become empowered as a confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm really pleased to have with me Kevin Hoover as my guest. And let me tell you about Kevin. So he's the founder of Next Crest, a consulting company helping business leaders, coaches, and visionaries overcome burnout, lagging sales, and low life balance so they can do the work great leaders are here to do. Next Crest facilitates revenue growth, leverage, and brand focus for clients who want more from their P&L than just positive cash flow. He's a yes you can type of change maker, bringing out of the box strategies, multiple lives worth of experience, and proven track record of results for business leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries in building businesses in less time. So we're going to talk about building, launching, and growing a multi-6-figure coaching business. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Kevin Hoover. Welcome,
Thank you
Kevin.
so much. Thanks. It's great to be here.
So we always start with two easy questions. The first being, just tell everybody, where do you live? Where do you call home right now?
I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, right on the coast.
Well, my sister lives in Conway.
Beautiful. That's right up the street.
Yeah. I love Myrtle Beach. My family is all there right now, so just beware.
Wonderful. I'll sell them high for you.
So please share a little bit about your journey. You know, we gave sort of the business side, the accolades, but really what took Kevin from maybe that college student to deciding, okay, this is the journey that I want. This is the path that I'm going to take on this journey for right now, doing what you do today.
I'll try to give you the short version of a long story, but I worked in corporate hospitality for 15 years and running hotels and restaurants in New York City, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, South Carolina. And I was climbing the corporate ladder, so to speak. And then I got to the point where I was looking higher up the ladder I was on, and I didn't really see anyone living a life that I wanted for myself or for my family. And so I had to make a hard choice. And at that point, I think when I left corporate, I was just married, newly married, and we were considering starting a family. And I told my wife, I said, I don't want to be working 70 hours a week and nights and weekends and have to fight for holidays off and things like that. So we need to make a switch. And so I tried a few things, failed at a few things before I landed into entrepreneurship and running my own consulting firm. And that was kind of that progression, going through that transformation for me was just, it just changed the way I live altogether. And it changed the way I parent. It changed the way that I am a partner to my wife and my health. And it just made so many positive changes that's kind of where I wanted to bring that to the world. If you're interested in that, that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. And it's so true. You know, I spent over 40 years in corporate, and you just saw that all the time. You first saw that leader and you thought, oh, that's what I want, the car, the money, the whatever. And then you look closer and you really saw, well, I don't think they're very happy. They're looking tired. I don't know if they're going to last to their 80s or 70s.
Yeah.
And so you do start to question, is that the life that I want? And when you talk about family too, we always hear, and I do a lot of podcasts of people trying to struggle to balance, and really, that's a falsehood. There's no balance, but
Mhm.
prioritize, how do you prioritize things to match your core goals and things?
Yes, indeed.
So as a coach, I'm glad that you talked about that you had failures, because I think a lot of us think, well, we look at someone that's successful making 6, 7 figures and you think, oh, that's what I want. But, they didn't start out day one like they are today.
No.
So let's talk about why do most entrepreneurs fail in that first year?
I think there's a lot of reason. Most of it is you don't know what you don't know. But I think there's also a little bit of romantic nature in there for us, where we romanticize entrepreneurship and we use our passions and we use all these emotional things that kind of drive our decision making in that first year. And it can be really detrimental. The first business I started out of corporate was a photography company, because I'm very creative, I'm very artistic. I love to take pictures, and I thought, well,
Yeah.
I'll become a photographer. And as I got into that, and I became a very mediocre photographer. So it's not something that you can that's not
Oh.
sustainable if you're a mediocre photographer in the world where everyone's got a camera on their hip. You
Mhm.
have to be a really great photographer to sustain that business. And so I romanticized that life of, ooh, the artistic, the Renaissance
Mhm.
man, and that seemed very cool to me. And then I got into it. And I did it for about a year and a half. And I think I sat down at dinner one night and I looked at my wife and she was like, this is not sustainable. I don't think we
Yeah.
can continue. So that was, I think that's why most people fail. They go through a similar scenario of what I went through. They're leaving their, whatever scenario they're in, and they're trying to monetize a passion or
Yeah.
romanticize the next step. And you can really make some decisions that are emotional and not always
Mhm.
business smart.
Yeah, so very true. And and I think sometimes, especially for those of us, like I retired in 2018 and took 2 years off and then realized that I need to work. I need to do things that give me purpose. But, it's
Mhm.
not for everybody. But I think people think, well, I'll become an entrepreneur because, yes, you are your own boss. But probably what saved my butt is the fact that I was a project manager for the last 20 years of my career. And so I had discipline of working from home
Yeah.
and knowing what to do and how to keep busy and things like that. So because you can't sustain a business if you don't put in the work.
Very true. Very true. And I think that's also the illusion that we have in today's world is, we're going to
Hmm.
have this laptop lifestyle and we're going to work 3 hours a day and make 6 figures. And it's very much part of it. And some people, you can certainly do that, but I will say it's not an easy road to get to that point. And I've lived that lifestyle, where we were traveling the country for about 18 months with my family, and I worked out of a camper, an RV, and it wasn't for me.
Hmm.
I didn't have enough time to get the things done to run the business I wanted.
Yeah. Well, I've probably interviewed 8. I'm going to do one of my books. I'm going to do is just all the nomads that I've interviewed, because I find them totally fascinating, and a little part of me wants to do that, just.
Yeah.
But then the other part of me is the grandmother and says, no, I can't leave my baby. The grandboys, which they're not babies anymore, but
Right.
I can't be that far away. It's you've got all kinds of other challenges with internet and
Mm.
weather and all kinds of things. So that's another thing that I think we romanticize about. But if it's for you to do, I would say go ahead, do it. Check that off your list. Um, we talk. You talked about the being able to run your business to actually make money, and so to get to 6 figures, you do have to have some high ticket, high level sales,
Mhm.
and I think this is where you and I might align in terms of what we do, because in addition to leadership, I talk about being a better communicator. And it- so, how do you coach people to not be salesy to achieve those high ticket sales?
That comes up, as you know, you probably experience it in your world. It comes up all the time. I want to make money, but I don't want to be salesy. And so I've spent a lot of time in that. And a lot of times that goes back to the person's money story. And it also goes back to what you're offering. You know, when we feel salesy, for me, I immediately say, well, you don't believe in what you're selling, meaning what you're selling doesn't actually solve a problem for someone. So you feel like you need to convince them they have the problem and then convince them that you're the solution. And that's normally when that feeling comes in of you're feeling salesy. And to eliminate that, you actually have to solve a real problem that your clients or your potential clients are saying willingly, I have that. I need that solution. And so a lot of times the feeling of being salesy has nothing to do with anything other than you're offering the wrong thing, or you're offering something that is not a real problem solver. It's a contributor to a problem solver, perhaps, but it's not actually going to solve the problem. So we then reverse engineer and we craft your offer as a coach, consultant, whatever you're doing, even some products. We reverse engineer based on the actual problems that your avatar has, so that you can avoid feeling salesy. You know, if I'm solving a real problem for, let's say, parents, and it's a real problem, and all the parents are going, yes, 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 I want that, there's zero chance that I'm ever going to feel salesy, because they're telling me that they want this thing. But if they're going, well, I don't know, then I have to convince them, and that's when that comes into play. So there are ways to mitigate the salesy feeling. And it can be a number of things, but I found that most of the time it's the belief in what you're offering. It will take care of that.
Yeah, I know for another business I have is my anti-aging and wellness. And so usually it just is conversations that I have with the people when they find out I'm 66, and they just say, wow, what, huh? And so then it's natural, you know, it is, well, and I use everything that I sell. And so it's really not, it's like you going to a movie and you telling the person what you liked about that movie and why they should go to that movie because you liked it so much and you had such a great response to it. And so you're not really selling it, you get,
No.
and so I totally agree with that. In the beginning, I talked about the balance of work life. And so I'd love for you to share your thoughts on that. I kind of gave a little bit of mine, but just do you think it really exists in as you're talking to people and more experience in that maybe than I have?
I think you and I agree on this one as well. To be honest with you, I don't think work-life balance exists in the way that we think about work-life balance. I more consider it work-life management. And the reason for that is we have these little phones on our hips. We have the if you're in corporate, you know, the expectation now, I work with some companies and some consulting aspects who are going through some downsizing or layoffs. And the expectation is that time is ours. And so with access to our teams and our employees and everyone, it's almost impossible to balance. And when we really zoom out and think about it, balance is not what we want to begin with. Balance, by definition, is two equal parts. We don't want to work 8 hours and then live 8 hours. We want to work 4 hours and live 20 hours. And so balance is just the wrong word in my experience to choose in that, even though it's something we're fighting for. So I think the reason people don't ever achieve what they perceive as work-life balance is because we're using the wrong words, first of all, but second, access to people and companies and everything, we're just nonstop. So you really have to set boundaries. And part of my management strategy is from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m., my phone is off. It's not off, it's on airplane mode. So like my wife can contact me, but my phone won't ring.
I use silent.
Silent. And so that's a strategy for me to achieve this thing of balance, but I'm managing it instead of balancing it. And I have a 9-year-old son, so I want to play baseball with him in the yard in the evenings and not think about the sales. So I do think the intention that we have for work-life balance is pure. But when we really try to achieve that, we have to step back a little bit and say, wait a minute, balance is not the word. It's more of a management thing or whatever your goal is. And then how do we do that? And then we have to set boundaries to actually make that real in our today life.
Yeah. And I think
Great question.
That's really important. You know, the setting boundaries, setting expectations. So, you know, part of the leadership that I teach is as that leader, that manager, supervisor, whatever you are, team lead, you need to have those conversations with your people and let them tell you what their expectations, their boundaries are, and you explain what yours are, and see what the compromise is. Because as you say, you know, I was a project lead. I had people all over around the world, and so, you know, unfortunately for me, during those times, that 8 to midnight or 8 to 8 in the morning didn't always work if I had
Didn't
people
work.
in Australia or Japan or whatever calling me. But you had to prioritize, like, okay, well,
Mhm.
if I get that, I have it on silent, but I can see when it comes, you know, it comes on my watch or something, and I choose what I'm going to do and determine, okay, but you set that expectation. Don't call me unless it is, you know, the world is on fire or something during this time of day that's my family time or whatnot.
Right.
But if they do call, I respectfully will answer that. And so
Mhm.
it's just the same thing, you know, as in our jobs that we have now. I have people all around the world, and so same kind of thing. You have
Mhm.
to set those expectations and that those boundaries. And I guess the other boundary that we can set too is who we work with, who our
Mhm.
clients are. We have that beauty that we didn't have at corporate, perhaps, of saying, I don't work with jerks, or you know,
Very
you,
much.
you, so you aren't going to follow my boundaries or agree to my boundaries, respect them. So therefore, I don't choose to work with you.
Absolutely. I love that. That is the upside of entrepreneurship is, you know, in corporate, I didn't have a choice who I worked with or who was on my
Yeah.
team, or, you know, you just kind of had to deal with the cards you were handed. And I enjoy choosing my teammates in the entrepreneur world.
Yeah. So I guess in your experience, what do you think the biggest hurdle has that you see for those purpose-driven entrepreneurs, you know, truly driven,
Yeah.
and and sometimes it is a behavior change almost, which of course the individual has to recognize and do. We can tell them all day long how things may be different, you know, not using the word should, but may be different if they choose to change their behavior and things. But sometimes that belief and trust
Hmm.
in you has to be really strongly established for them to do what they need to do. So talk about, you know, the biggest hurdle that you've seen for the purpose-driven entrepreneurs.
I I'm gonna probably have an unpopular opinion on this, but I think I'm a purpose-driven entrepreneur. I know you are as well, so I understand that. But I do think that most people are walking through this world rejecting their actual purpose. So we gravitate to something that we would want to be our purpose, and we want to monetize that and all of that. And I think a couple of things come up is, one, your purpose doesn't have to be the thing that makes you money. Your purpose could be to start a business that funds your purpose, or gives you the life that you're able to, you know, to fulfill your purpose. So I do think there's many different facets. That certainly some people do work in their purpose, they make money off their purpose, and that is the perfect storm. That is the ideal scenario. But I think we've romanticized as well this, I have to work in my passion or my purpose, and you do, but that purpose doesn't have to be the thing that makes you the money. And so when we start our businesses, we really want to understand, is this actually my purpose? Is this my
Mm.
real purpose for being on this planet? Is there a market for it, or do I need to create something else that funds my purpose? And going through that maze and that puzzle it takes a little bit of effort, but it also takes some expertise to navigate those waters. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have, is that we've said purpose-driven business for a long time. You and I work in it. We coach it, we preach it, we consult on it.
Mhm.
We love it. And I just truly do love that purpose-driven business. But I can't say how many times that I was speaking to a dad yesterday, who wants to leave his job, and he wants to do this thing as his purpose. And I've just done it too much. I've done it for a decade. And I've said, well, I think you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve in the next 3 years. So we're going to have to figure something else out to kind of carry us over, and then work to get in that. And so don't be attached to how your purpose shows up. Just be very clear and work very hard on understanding, is this my purpose? And sometimes it's not what you want it to be. That's just the bitter truth, is sometimes you're here to do something that you go, oh man, is that it? That's why I'm here? And that's where you have to really check in with yourself and say, am I willing to do that? And I did that for a long time. I rejected my purpose. I wanted to be a consultant for CEOs and high level people, and, go to New York and rub elbows and have that lifestyle. And I've lived in New York City for a long time. And so it wasn't foreign to me, but when I really got down to it and I started really diving in, I was like, wait a minute, my purpose is to help people who want to escape a life of demand and create a life that's on demand. And that when I started to embrace all that, that's really when business started to take off. And I was like, okay, because I started to get energized by the results we were getting and the process. And it felt like I wasn't having to convince people as much. And that was it. So if you're wondering, is this my purpose? Really have a check-in with yourself. And then also realize that it doesn't have to be the thing that makes you money. You could be, someone who knits sweaters for the homeless, and that could be your purpose. But you're going to have a business that funds that, or
That's
donations.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really brilliant. A couple of things came to my mind as you were talking about that. First of all, it's taking it from a different perspective, if you will. But whenever I first started working years ago, and I just went to business school, I didn't go to college until I was in my late 40s. And my one friend went to work for a company, and she had, the way this company worked is you were put into an assignment for 6 months or a year in a department and checked it out. And then they often moved you to another department. And after about 3 years, they worked with you to decide, okay, well, what fits best? What's your best thing? And so I think a lot of times, even choosing what our college degree is going to be, or what do we want to be when we grow up, and I can tell you that's going to change 100 times,
Absolutely.
many times. It's no longer where, and I did work for 27 years for a company, but that was my third company. And so all of my siblings, they worked just, 5 years here, 5 years there, till you find what is going to be able to give you the life you need. But all the time that I worked in all those companies, I did volunteer work, which really giving back to people, helping people is my purpose. That's what I do. And so when it came time to retire, I knew that I could use the funds of my retirement to help me start to build to get to what my purpose is. But I love the fact that it is sometimes that you have to do the mundane, yucky kind of stuff to be able to fit in your purpose until it can be the job that you ultimately have. And there's 24 hours in a day. You could spend 2 or 3 hours a day just doing your purpose as you do that boring, mundane stuff during the rest of the time.
Absolutely. I work with a lot of people who come to me and they want to transition from corporate, and that's not always the answer.
Yeah.
To feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what you're doing on Saturday that will be the difference in you being fulfilled in life versus not. And so you make a great point that, I think it's easy to blame the company, so to speak. And that's not always the problem. Not always.
Yeah. I think it's also mindset. I
Yes.
love I have the most wonderful, absolutely wonderful son-in-law who is absolutely fabulous what he does as an accountant, as a CPA. But where he is most happy is coaching kids, baseball, basketball. And that ultimately, that's ultimately what he would like to do, but he's that conflict of I need to support my family. I need to save money for the kids to go to college. I need to be there, be present with them. And so you do have that inner conflict, that mindset piece of, okay, well, can you understand that it's okay that you're doing this and enjoy the time that you're doing that, because that makes you a whole person. And rather than feeling conflicted and angry that you have to work in a job that you really don't love as much as this volunteering that you're doing. I think that's a lot of why people are so depressed or sad, is that they just have a hard time accepting their situation today and worry about the future so much instead of living for the present.
I agree. I agree completely. And I think that's the 80-20 rule. You know, it's anytime someone says they want to start their own business, I have to break the news that you're going to not like 80% of what you're doing. Right? But you have to love the 20% so much that you'll tolerate the 80%. You know, and so it's same goes in life. You know, it's you know, I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to go take the trash to the end of the street. I don't want, there's a lot of things we do that we don't want to do. But if the 20% brings us so much joy and makes such an impact and fulfills us in so many ways, it's easier to tolerate. You know, just like your son-in-law, he probably enjoys coaching so much and the lifestyle that he's created for his family so much that he's willing to be an accountant.
Yeah.
And he's willing to do that.
And you have to, you know, I always talk about to the folks that I'm coaching about the small wins. And
Yes.
so, as I said, my son-in-law is really good at his day job. and he's impacting positively people's lives. So celebrate that. You know, yeah, it's long days, a lot of travel, whatever, but what difference are you making in these lives of companies, businesses, or individuals? Celebrate that. And then also, and that might only be 20% of that 80% that you're doing that you don't like, but just celebrate that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we kind of talk a little bit about, you decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build a coaching business. What are some steps, practical steps that they should be taking to go from that build to launch? And then at some point, you have to take that hard look at everything and push yourself outside that comfort zone and say, okay, I'm going to start to grow. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurship is very much, you have to be comfortable building the plane at 30,000 feet. You know, so I'm a big fan of transition strategies and things like that. But we start in my world, we start very simply. We lead with revenue because revenue is the lifeline for the business. So leading with ideas is not, an idea is worth zero until you start putting it out into the world. And so you can't put 20 ideas out there into the world from the get and expect that to work. So we kind of simplify it so that you can really settle in a little bit. And it really is the idea of one avatar, one offer. You know, one client, one offer. That's it. And then when you get that down, you know, so in my world, it's we try to do $10,000 months for 3 months in a row, and then we start scaling. We start adding verticals. We start doing, you know, so it is getting comfortable with that one client, one offer scenario. And when you do that for 90 days, you kind of learn a whole lot about what the scale should look like.
Right.
More importantly, you're now making decisions from a positive revenue standpoint versus a scarcity standpoint. You know, if you're a startup and you've got zero revenue coming in and you're trying to scale, you're just making decisions based on what you can afford, not what is best for the business. So if we come in and we say, okay, we've now got a consistent 10K business that's you know, really we understand how to make $10,000 a month in revenue a month. So now we can make a different decision when it comes to scale. If you're hiring a social media manager or a VA, or you're trying to do some marketing or advertising or speak on a stage that maybe it costs 10 grand to be on that stage, or whatever the scenario may be, you're just making a different decision from a positive revenue standpoint. So I think I found that to be so sort of, it's hard to talk people into that, but once they see it, they go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And we made a different choice than we would have made 90 days ago. And actually this works out better. And sometimes when I go into a business, we'll have to kind of unwind a little bit and then build it back up. But I think that's the piece of advice I would give anybody. It's always lead with revenue. If you look at your calendar for a week, and I didn't say this, but I do say this, so it's not my quote. I don't know who said it, but I tell people, I said, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And if you show me your calendar and it's changed the font on my website and it's, surf the internet or scroll through TikTok, if that's on your calendar, you're not leading with revenue, right?
No, you're
And
not.
so that's the thing. We fill our calendar with revenue generating activities. We are very clear on our avatar, on our niche, and we're very clear on the offer and the problem we solve. And then we solve that so much that we have it cold. After 90 days, you should have that pitched cold. When someone asks you at a networking event what you do, you should be able to very clearly answer that very quickly.
Right.
And that's kind of that's the process that I go through that I've just found great success in. And it's just really fun to see budding entrepreneurs go through that process and have the aha moments and then take the first check home to their families. And that's always always gives them a breath out, puts them at ease, puts their family at ease when they bring that first check home.
So for you, what has been, I guess, you've had all those things. If you could think about your life thus far, the journey that you've had, what has been one bump in the road where you had to take that left turn, pivot, change, and go through those scary things, have the courage and to build the confidence to do something different? Really, what lesson did you learn from a failure?
I think the biggest bump in the road, I started my business officially in 2018. And so I was a year in. I was doing pretty well for being a year in. And in 2019, my son was 4 years old and he was diagnosed with cancer. He survived. He beat it. So
Awesome.
I want to just spoil the story. So I always have to say that next, that he's in the next room. He's 9 years old. He's an honor roll student going into fourth grade. He's a beautiful soul, and I love it. But if you can think about a year into my business, this thing just was dumped on us that turned our whole world upside down. And I tell people all the time, I became an entrepreneur in 2013. I became a real entrepreneur in 2019. And what I mean by that is I went from working 6-7 days a week, running 2 businesses. And then when my son was in treatment, I promised him and I promised my wife, everyone, the whole family would be at every treatment. We would never be alone. We would never be divided. We would all be there. We're in this together. And so I had to scale my work week back to 1 day a week, and it was barely 1 day. And I was scared. It was uncomfortable. It was frightening. And in that process, what I learned was that I was allocating 8, 9, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day to do the work that I could get done in 3 hours. And when I focused on what was necessary instead of what was the next shiny object or what was the scale part, and when I only had time to focus on what was necessary, and that was my motto, every time I looked at my calendar, is that necessary? If it wasn't a paying client, a legal contract, if it wasn't someone that needed me or they had to be linked to revenue or service in some way for it to be necessary. And I realized that I was doing a lot of things that just didn't matter. And that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned. And I'll be honest, I haven't worked full-time since 2019, full-time hours. And, I work about 3 days a week. Now my son's in school, so I've got a lot more time. So I work a little more now than I used to. But just because I want something to do, I'm not quite ready to call it quits yet. I've still got some life in me.
That's like me.
Yeah, I'm 50. I still got some spunk. Let's go, But I think that was the big lesson is I spent a lot of years allocating way too much time to do something that didn't require that much time. And that was it was creating burnout. It was creating anxiety. It was not making me the time that I wanted, even though I was making the money I wanted. I wasn't making the time. And as we went through the 2-year treatment and we did all the things that we had to do, I just really grabbed onto that. And I think when we finished treatment, I looked at my wife and we looked at each other and we were both like, well, what are we supposed to do now? Like now that we don't have, we're cancer free. What are we supposed to do now? And I just told her, I said, I think it would be a tragedy for us to go back to the way things were. I said, we want to transcend. We want to, graduate from this season, but I don't want to go back to working 70 hours a week. And, the thing that I love the most in the world was almost taken from me. and I want to spend as much time with him as possible.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we live.
Wow. As you were telling that story, it reminded me of one of the mentors that I had years and years ago, who said, when you're looking at your day and trying to prioritize things, think about what you do the week before you take a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get done all kinds of stuff in those 5 days that you might have taken a month and a half to do in a normal time. But because
Absolutely.
you knew I need to get all this done, all these things buttoned up, and make sure that my email doesn't come in and I have to take, when I get back from my vacation, have this crazy, horrible time. We get
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff done. And it's just having that mindset of pre-vacation. What do I need to do?
I love that. I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
Well, it has been so great having this conversation. We could probably talk for days on all of these different areas we've covered today about building, launching, and growing our coaching business to that 6-figure and beyond level. But it's time now for me to share my slide. If you are listening, you know you should have been taking notes. I tell you this every time, but quick, go get a paper and pencil so you can get the contact information of the website for Kevin. All this information, though, will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling, so please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. For the website, it is My Next Crest, C-R-E-S-T, mynextcrest.com. On Facebook is Next Crest. On YouTube, it's at Mission to Margins with initial cap, at mission singular to margins plural. And LinkedIn is Next Crest. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk to you about the things that he has, the resources on his website, and also a little bit about different areas on his website that you might want to visit to be more informed and knowledgeable of how to grow your business. And I also would like him to just share the social media that he spends the most time in so that you can go there and DM it or connect with him. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. I spend most of my time on YouTube and Facebook. So those are always the best ways. If you're really interested in, my YouTube videos are very much about growing a coaching or consulting business. And so we really dive into actual action steps on that. So if that's what you're looking for, that's a great place to go. On my website, one of the things that I am very proud of is my free mastermind. It's called Rise Mastermind. We train once a month for a couple hours. It's totally free. You give me your email, I'll send you the Zoom link. We are live Q&A. It's not it's recorded, but it's not a recording. It is actually human to human. And I love that. And so if you're interested in that, the link is on my website at mynextcrest.com, and you can go there and just register for that. And we also have a vault of all the videos that we've ever done in the Rise Mastermind will be there for you to access. So you can go back through the days and through the months and kind of see what we talked about last month and show up live for this month. And that is the last Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Fantastic. Well, Kevin, I just really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope that people will go to your website and take advantage also of that free mastermind. I think that's brilliant. And thank you so much for being so much of a servant leader, giving that to us. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.